like to encourage you to rethink the relationship between success and happiness. You see, I was taught that you work hard, you become successful, and then you get to be happy. But I'm going to suggest we turn this around. You see, the problem with the hard work, success, happiness formula is that the happiness is always one success away. As in, when I get the promotion, then I'll be happy. But after the promotion, it's when I get the bigger house, the new car, the sailing yacht, then I'll be happy. The happiness is always one success away. What we find is that hard work leads to success, which leads to the expectation of more hard work. And hard work and success become a cycle, and the happiness gets squeezed out. You see, I lived this formula for years. And by most measures, I was a successful surgeon, poised to one day be president of the hospital medical staff. I had the nice house. I had the new car. I even had the sailing yacht. But I was caught in a paradox. The more successful I became, the less happy I seemed to be. This was me at that time. My focus on success had made me unhealthy, unhappy, and frankly, obese. If you'd asked me at that time, I would have told you I was burned out. But let's be honest. Burnout is just the acceptable euphemism professionals use because we can't afford to admit we're depressed. I was professionally respected, financially successful, physically and emotionally bankrupt. I needed to make a change. I needed to start putting happiness into my life as a priority. But that proved harder than it sounded. You see, I had a secret fear. I was afraid to be happy. Afraid it would cost me my edge. I believed that dissatisfaction somehow insulated me against complacency. So I had to ask, is there a way I can be both happy and still do good work? Well, it turns out a German philosopher once said that the ignorant man asked a question a wise man answered 1,000 years ago. Turned out my question had been answered 2,000 years ago. So maybe I'm an especially slow learner. The Greek philosopher Aristotle told us that happiness is the meaning and the purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. So it's clear he thought happiness was primary. But there's one other thing. 2,000 years later, we're talking about him today. So I think it's pretty safe to assume he didn't just slack off after that. So what can Aristotle teach us about happiness? Well, Aristotle defined happiness as virtuous activity of the soul. Virtuous activity of the soul. Now, I don't know about you, but in the past, I tend to equate happy with fun, and virtue doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. But let's look at what Aristotle meant. Aristotle told us that a virtue is a value put into action. Value plus action equals virtue. More than that, he told us that you could put together several virtues to create a character that you define. And that when you define your own character, you take control of your life. And that's what I needed to do, take control of my life. But first, I needed to decide what I valued. So for 1 week, I carried a note card with me everywhere I went. And every time something occurred to me, I would write on that note card. And at the end of the week, you know what I had? A really messy note card. Both sides. Now, when Aristotle did this, he got 12 virtues. And these included things like courage, temperance, and justice. Well, turns out I'm no Aristotle. I had 5 top values. And my values were family, fitness, a love of learning, an appreciation of beauty, and a love of being outdoors. But those were just words on a note card. They may have been values, but I wasn't putting them into action. Let me ask you a question. Are you putting your values into action? Let's do a little thought experiment. Think for a moment about the things you value most. Now imagine that for one day, I'm going to follow you around. I'm going to watch everything that you do, and at the end of the day, I'm going to make a list of what I think your values are based on the actions I observed. Will my list match the list in your head? If not, there's going to be tension in your life. That tension is like two hands joined by a rubber band. One hand is your values, one hand is what you actually do. The further apart those two things are, the more tension there will be in your life. And the more energy it's going to take to maintain that divide. To live a happier and more tension-free life, we need to bring our values and our actions into alignment. We need to live with virtue. For me, this meant giving up many of the things that had previously defined success. For example, I resigned from several hospital communities so I could be home to have dinner with my family. That took me off the success track of one day being president of the hospital medical staff. But it put me in touch with my primary value, my family. Okay, so giving up boring hospital meetings to spend time with your family, that's easy, right? But you can do this for things that don't seem so easy. For example, exercise. I knew for years I needed to do something about my weight. So I did what anyone would do in my situation. I'm sure it's what all of you have done at some point. I went on the internet and I Googled a quick and easy solution. And I found many, but none of them actually worked for me. Mostly because they involved doing unnatural things in an artificial environment like my basement or a gymnasium. But then I realized one of my values is being outdoors. I thought, what if I just go for a walk outside? And once I started doing that, I realized if I walked a little farther or a little faster, I could see a little more. Over time, I found myself running outdoors. You see, I let my value lead. Because of that, I found I enjoyed the process. The work didn't feel so much like work. And the success? Well, the success came in some surprising ways. In 2018, I did the Imogene Pass Run. This is a 17.1 mile run from the town of Uray, Colorado to the town of Telluride, Colorado. Seen here, by going over 13,000-foot Imogene Pass, seen way up there. Quite an improvement for a guy who used to find it challenging just to walk up a flight of stairs. Now, was training for Imogene easy? No. Was running Imogene always fun? Definitely not. It's a steep, rough, rutted trek through rapidly changing elevation and weather that doesn't care one bit about you and what you want. And that's part of what makes it so satisfying to do. You see, life isn't meant to be easy. It's the difficult parts that challenge our values and test our virtues. And meeting that challenge was more than climbing a mountain. It was overcoming the obstacles in my life that had kept me from becoming the person I was meant to be. Now, up until now, I've talked about self-improvement. But there's a caveat. Self-improvement is too small a goal. It's easy for this to become warped into self-involvement or self-aggrandizement. To really make this work, you need to take it one step farther. You need to take our values, put them into action to build a better character. But then we need to use that better character to help others. I think of this like a painter working in their studio. In the studio, they turn their values into actions, but they don't really earn the title of artist until they bring their work out of the studio and share it with the rest of us. So that's what I decided to do. I took the lessons I learned and I applied them to my work. In my training, I was taught my job is to remove diseased organs and repair injury. But I came to realize it's more than that. My calling is actually the elimination of suffering. And suffering is more than physical pain, and it affects more than just the person who's ill. So now, I try and bring my full presence to each of my patients and their families. And what I found is that when I start from a place of being happy, I do my work better. So I'm going to invite you to rethink the formula for a good life. Don't focus on the pursuit of success. Instead, follow your values. Let your values lead you. You'll find the process is something you enjoy. And the work won't feel so much like hard work. It'll feel like good work. And just trust that the success will come naturally and in some unexpected ways. Thank you.